the United States Navy.
Hey, Mark, you want to start that sentence again? I'm going now.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right, it's all right. My name is Mark Del Maestro. I served in Vietnam from August of 1967 till August of 1968 with the United States Navy on a riverboat out of the deep water port of Da Nang. Our mission was to bring supplies to the troops in Hue and Dong Han, the Perfume and Qua Viet rivers. I want to talk about lessons of war. I don't want to talk about what I did or what we did because you've seen the movies and it's redundant. And I feel that the lessons are far more important of what it is that we learned. One of the great lessons of Vietnam that the communists learned, which is never spoken about, because I always try and think about not only did what America learn, but what did the communists learn. And one of the great lessons that they learned was that they could not ever defeat America through our military. There was just no way that that could ever happen. So they had to find a way to defeat us from within, and that's exactly what's going on today. They found a way, and the battle is different, much different. I want to explain to you the greatest war, and this is something I think is very important, because if you understand the greatest war, you can fight it better. And this is what I tell the students that I speak to, especially them. And I just want to share it with you tonight. This is the greatest war. We are living in an absolutely perfect world. We are living in an absolutely perfect world. The earth is turning approximately 1,000 miles an hour in its relationship to the sun, so that all of the earth can get the benefit of the sun's life-giving rays. In the center of the earth is a solid ball of iron and nickel, and it's turning slower than the earth is turning, just slow enough to create enough friction to keep the lava it floats in hot, and all the volcanoes are the pressure relief points. And this ball is Earth's generator. It generates the magnetic field that protects us from the solar storm of the sun. The particles coming off the sun would bombard the earth, and we could not have life on it as we know it. So the magnetic field catches these particles and forces them around the earth. And some of the particles fall into the magnetic vortex at the poles and are reflected by the sun's light, and those particles that reflection is called the northern and southern lights. The Earth's perfect tilt of 23.5 degrees on Earth's axis gives us our 4 seasons. And the moon holds the Earth from wobbling off its axis and controls our tides. And the Earth is the perfect distance from the sun, with the perfect atmosphere maintaining the perfect temperature range. And all the planets are in a perfectly flat line in their orbit around the sun, keeping their orbit and Earth's orbit in absolutely perfect balance. And all the plants and all the animals, the air, the water, the design of our bodies, all of this was done for us. If you think there's no God, please think again. What makes us perfect as human beings, what makes us absolutely perfect, are our differences. If we were all the same, we would have died of boredom long ago. What makes us absolutely perfect are our differences. The greatest war human beings will always fight, will forever fight, is to accept and honor and respect our differences, and to learn to work together in spite of them. God chooses the color of our skin. God chooses if we are a man or a woman. God chooses our parents and our brothers and our sisters, and God chooses the nation we are born in. And I believe we should be thanking God every day for putting all of us in the greatest nation this world has ever known. We should be at least saying that prayer. We live in a dangerous world, And it has to be a dangerous world. It will always be a dangerous world. Because it's the danger, it's the conflict, it's the challenges that forces human beings to think. It's the dangerous world that will test our resolve and force us to find our courage. It's the dangerous world that will define who we really are. And war will always be the ultimate danger, the ultimate conflict, the ultimate challenge. That's the greatest war. Very simple to explain. Most people have never heard it before ever. But it's just the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And that's what one of the things that I speak to the students about. Tonight I'm going to change it a little bit from what I speak to them about. I want to talk to you about your vote. I mentioned it the last time I was here, and I want to go more into it and how important your vote is. I hear my vote doesn't count, or I just cancel each other out, or I'm too lazy to go. Those are basically the three excuses that I hear. What goes around comes around. If lazy is what you send out, lazy is what you're going to get back. I cancel each other out. The truth is, you don't cancel each other out at all. They count your vote. It counts. They want to know where you stand. They want to know what you're thinking. You cannot believe how the votes are disseminated. They know the age groups, men or women, college kids, blue-collar workers. They have it all separated all out into who actually steps up to vote. So you don't cancel each other out at all. And my vote doesn't count. The biggest fallacy of all. The average number of eligible voters who actually show up at the polls is 25%. That's the average number, 25%. So if you're voting in an election like that, your vote counts as 4, because you're voting for the 3 that didn't show up. In the presidential election, when 50 to 60% of the people show up, your vote counts as 2. The only time your vote will actually count as 1 is when everybody shows up to vote, and you and I know that'll never happen. So your vote will always count as more than 1. But this is how not voting hurts us all. This is the one that just gets us every time. That 25% is not a secret. The politicians know it. They know exactly how many people show up. And the message to them is loud and clear. Most people don't care. And I can't argue with them on that. I can't say, well, you should care about the 25% that did care. They don't care. Most people don't care. And I believe that if 75% of the eligible voters in America would actually show up and vote and say nothing else, but you know what, I'm watching and I care and I'm voting and I'm clicking the lever. I truly believe we wouldn't be in the predicament we are today, because too many people would know and love their country and understand what freedom is all about. And they would, no way we'd be in this predicament. So everybody I meet, especially the young people, I tell them, please don't throw your vote away. It is as important as you are. I've been going to school boards and asking them 2 things. 2 things. Because to add to the mission statement, the first thing, to add to the mission statement, could you please add a sentence? We are encouraging and teaching our young people, our students, to become good American citizens. Could you just add that to the mission statement? Because right now, they're teaching them to be good global citizens, citizens of the world. And I say to them, you're giving them only 2 choices, because what if you don't want to be a citizen of the world? We're not sending people to Mars or Venus. I mean, they're talking about it, but I don't, What if you don't want to be a citizen of a global citizen? What's the choice? Suicide. The only one that I heard, What would be wrong with teaching our students to become good American citizens? What's wrong with that? And why can't you put that up and teach it? If they don't want to be good American citizens, there's lots of Americans moving to Mexico and other countries. There's 180 plus other countries they could choose to go to. And for me, if they choose to go and they need a wave goodbye, they got it real easy from me. Bye. I'm not holding you back. And the second thing I asked the board to do is go on the homepage of every school, and they should be able to see American core values. And when you click on it, you should be able to read God, country, duty, honor, integrity, faith, hope, charity, personal responsibility, honesty, just to name a few. You could list them. And they said, well, we're already teaching our kids that. Well, then why wouldn't you put it up?
Yeah, there you go.
Why wouldn't you just write it then? If you're already doing it, what'd be the harm in writing it? Well, we have a problem with God. Really? Really? You have a problem with God? Here's a God rule. This is a God rule, and I like to talk about God rules. Eating, breathing, sleeping, God's rules. If you don't breathe, you die. God's rules. Right? Everybody gets to see God. Everybody dies. And when you get to stand in front of Him, and He asks you, "Why did you deny me?" What would you say? I mean, think about it. What would you say? So I asked the school board, you must have already have an answer. And since you're so well educated with titles and position, why can't you explain yourself? Why was it that you can deny God? Because I don't have a good answer at all. I never even heard of one. And I pray to God that He won't even ask me. Because I don't have a good answer. But since you do, would you please explain yourself? And of course they don't. And they never do. Because no one's there to push them. And as I'm leaving the meeting, everybody comes up to me and says, "Wow, that was great. That was really good." Well, you couldn't applaud while I was standing there? You couldn't say anything? You were like stones in the chair. I might as well have been talking to an empty audience. You couldn't say anything? Well, we're afraid. We're afraid our children in that school, and they could take it out on our kids. Really? And you still send them to that school? If my kid was at that school, there would be no way. That principal and the vice principal knew who I was when my kids were in school, and they knew they would better take care of my kids because I would be all over it. It was turned around. That school was there for the people. It was there for the community. It wasn't there for the socialists. And when my kids were in school, it turned around. And people say to me, "Well, you don't have kids in school. Why do you still go to the school board?" Because my children and my grandchildren are worth dying for. And I'll stand in front of anybody. And because I'm a Vietnam veteran, there's no place I can't go, and there's no one I can't speak to anywhere in this country. And you know what else? My freedom to say God and say a prayer anywhere in this country, anywhere, any school, anywhere, has not been taken from me because I refuse to give it up. I refuse to give it up. So when the teacher said to me, you know, can you say higher being? I said, sure, I can say it. Higher being, that sounds good, right? But I won't, because I refuse to give up my freedom to say God. Period. Done. I was in a bar in New Jersey, which is full of these liberal progressive socialists. And there was a guy there who was speaking louder because he was speaking louder, he was going to teach everybody. And he was saying that those people in Arizona, what the hell, let's open the border. What the hell do they need the federal government to sue them for? Why would they stand up against that? Just sue, you know, we should have all open borders. So I said to him, really? If an illegal alien would walk into your home, because they're not going to knock on the door or ring the bell, and say, "You got an empty room there, I'll live in that room. That would be okay with you?" And of course he said, no, it wasn't, because I had to be ready, because if he said it was, I'd say to him right away, "Let me see your driver's license, because I don't want you to lie to me about where you live, because I want to take your address and put it on the internet and let all the illegals know whose house they can go to." So he said, no, that would be not okay. They couldn't come. So your line is now at your front door. He said, yes, my line's at the front door. I said, so if they came and pitched a tent in your yard, that would be okay. Well, no, that wouldn't be okay. So now your line is at the street. He goes, yep, my line is at the street. So if they came and lived in a car or a truck in front of your house in the street, that would be okay. No, that wouldn't be okay at all, no. This is why my line is at the border, because you don't even know where your line is. You don't have a clue. And my children and my grandchildren need to be protected, and not only protected from illegal aliens, which are destroying our nation, but idiots like you, who probably wouldn't even say a word if you saw somebody breaking into your neighbor's home. And immediately the bar erupted in applause, because they were happy and thrilled that they had a message for that guy. And all of a sudden, he wasn't the big talker anymore. He was sheepishly walking out. So I'm sharing it with you because you can use it too. It's a great way. Be ready to insist on seeing their license, because they'll give you a false address. And
Gotta put the correct address on it.
got to make sure you get it right, so when you put it on the internet, you know they know where to go. The freedom to fail in this nation is just as important as the freedom to succeed, and we're losing both. We're literally losing both, with welfare checks and food stamps and safety nets, and then if you fail, God forbid, we'll catch you if you fail. But if you succeed, God forbid if you succeed, because you will never, ever pay enough taxes. You will be bashed and beaten, and you will never, ever pay enough. So the freedom to fail and succeed is being taken away, and we're expecting our students to fit into a slot. And that is not what America is all about. And to give you some ammunition how to fight that, I talk about the Wright brothers, Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, just to name a few, Eli Whitney. And I talk about how these men had the freedom to not only think of their idea, but to bring it to a free market. And you couldn't study all the failures of these men. You don't have enough time in your life to study all their failures. But what the kids are not being taught was, only in America could these men have invented and brought this technology to a free market. Only in America. Igor Sikorsky had to come from another country just to perfect and build a helicopter. And these liberal progressives think that all that we needed to, everything that has to be invented has been invented. We don't need this freedom anymore. You kidding me? We're just scratching the surface. And America didn't keep this technology for itself. You can go anywhere in the world and see airplanes and cell phones and computers and electricity and helicopters. You can go anywhere in the world and see this. We didn't keep it for ourselves. And this freedom in America, the freedom to think and bring your ideas and work on your ideas and bring it to a free market, made the world a better place. The whole world is a better place because of that freedom in America to fail and succeed. And we're losing both, and it's destroying our nation. Another destruction. And the schools, the colleges and universities are already done. They're already liberals, progressive socialists. They're already done. We've lost them. And the fight to get those back is just beginning. If we get this next election and we get this is just a start of what's going on in the schools. The kids are coming out, they don't have to think. They're not being taught to think anymore. There's nothing. They come out of school. I got guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, because I work at a VA hospital in New Jersey. When I go back to Jersey in the summer, they have a wood shop, and I'm working on my project, and these kids come back and they go, okay, where's mine? You gonna make that for me? No, I'll teach you how to make it. You're gonna make it yourself. No. You don't know who I am. I just got back from Afghanistan. I said, I don't care. You're still gonna make it for yourself. Who do you think you're talking to? He says, well, I'll wait for you to make it for me. I says, well, you're going to be cobwebs on you. So he walks away, and all the other guys in the wood shop gather him up, and they take him in the corner, and they go, you ever hear about the Marines, you don't mess with the United States Marine Corps? And he goes, yeah, I heard that. You know what the Marines will tell you? They don't mess with the riverboat guys from Vietnam, and he's one of those guys. And he comes back, and he says, I'm really sorry. Hope I didn't offend you. And I said, my offer still stands. You want to make a jewelry box for your mom or your girlfriend or whatever you want to do? I'll get you good wood and I'll teach you how to do it. And then I get him in there and he's working on it, and I get to put him in a headlock and tell him things that I wish someone had told me when I came back from Vietnam. And it changes him. And I says, you are now personally responsible. You're personally responsible for yourself. The rest of your life is, the choices you make are yours and yours alone. And if you think that people are going to go around catching you, think again. Wake up. That's not what America's all about. And he said, I wish I had known that when I was in school. I would have studied harder. And I said, I wish I did. I wish I had spoken to you when I was in school. When you were in school. I see 4 years ago, when this administration was elected, freedom was being held up by all Americans, most of them, very high. And it was passed down to us. My father was a World War II veteran, my grandfather was World War I. And they passed freedom down to us, and it's our responsibility and our obligation and our duty to pass it down to our children and our grandchildren just as whole, just as complete as we got it. No lower, no chips, no cracks, no breaks, and certainly not smaller. So 4 years ago, freedom went from here to landing on our shoulder and on the backs of the American patriots. And we're standing there holding it up. And the liberals are saying, what are you doing holding it up for? Just step away. Let it fall. Step away, we'll give you food stamps and welfare checks, and we'll take care of your health care, and we'll educate your children. And if you're a legal alien, you'll get everything. So there's no reason for you to even step up to that bar. You don't want to step up to that bar. Step away. It's so much easier. And that's why freedom is hard. Because there's not gravity on freedom, and we have to push it back up. And that's why it's hard. And there'll be guys there standing there with you. There, my shoulder's right there. I got my arms around the bar, and I'm strong, and I'm everything. And I look around, and why are your feet off the ground? Why are your feet off the ground? No, my feet aren't off the ground. I'm pushing it up. No, you're pulling it down. You're pulling it down. Well, who are you going to believe? You're going to believe what I tell you, or you're going to believe what I say? I see your feet are off the ground. You're not standing there with me. You're pulling it down. And the liberal progressives are looking for it. What can they? Let's call the Muslims. They're already there. They're already hanging on it. They want it to fall to the ground and bury it. How else can we bury this bar of freedom? It's on the shoulders and on the backs of American people. How else can we get it off their shoulders and let it fall? Let's raise the debt. Let's raise the price of gasoline. Let's destroy the value of their homes.
Go for it.
Let's make unemployment really high so that they'll be afraid to lose their homes or their jobs. And they might step away from that bar and just let it fall because they're tired of holding it up. And I'm standing there saying, you know what? We got to push it back up, ladies and gentlemen. We got to get it back up there because that's how it was handed to us. That's how it was handed to us, and we've got a lot of work to do. Be not afraid to stand up for God in our country. Be not afraid. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mark?
Over here. There's one over there.
We'll start with me.
Start here.
All right, you have stated that freedom was passed down to us. How do you feel about the Patriot Act?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
You have talked about freedom. There went our Fourth Amendment rights.
Yeah, oh, well, I don't like it at all, yeah.
All right.
We should go back to the Constitution and the Declaration.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go back. Also, when you go to the school boards, I'm sorry I missed this, and I should, thank you for bringing it up. Also ask them, how ingrained are you teaching the Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, and our Bill of Rights to the high school students? And make sure you say high school students, because they'll tell you, oh, we're teaching them, but they're teaching the 4th graders and the 5th graders. All right? And then they'll forget, but I'm talking about the high school kids. How ingrained are they in teaching them the second greatest documents ever written? The first is, of course, the Bible. Second greatest documents ever written. So if you go to the school boards and you stand up, that's a good question to ask.
How do the students that you speak to, how do they react to you?
The kids?
Yes.
They're blown away.
Are they?
They're blown away.
And do you go to high school or?
High schools.
High schools.
It's very hard to get in. I have to ask 30, 40 schools to get into one. And then I've been going now for 12 years. I used to speak to about 8,000 to 10,000 students a year. And I would travel around the country. I lived in a fifth-wheel trailer home. And I would stop in Houston and spend a month in Houston and then go to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or San Francisco or California, and I'd spend a month in each city, and I'd see how many schools I could get into. And I'd ask 40, 50, 60 high schools, and then get into one. And the best city I ever did was New Orleans. Got into 4 schools in a month, and that was a record. So then I said, you know, I'm really wasting my time. I did that for about 8 or 9 years. I'm really wasting my time. What I should do is pick, my son lives here, so that's why I'm in Phoenix. So I spend the winter in Phoenix, and I go back to Jersey and spend the summer in Jersey. And I've been able to concentrate on these 2 places. And then teachers have me back every year. But to find that American Patriot teacher is very tough. And I'll give you an example of what happens. It took me 4 years to get into a high school in this area. Because every year I'd go in and ask and ask. And finally, the teacher said, okay, what could you possibly say to a group of seniors graduating in 4 months that could hurt them? So she brought me in her classroom, and I did my presentation in 45 minutes. You know, I could take 2 hours. And I did my 45-minute presentation in the first period, and then she figured she could throw me out in the second period, and she said, oh, you can do the second period? I said, yeah, sure. Did the second period. And during the second period, she was typing on her computer, and then I did the third period, and then the fourth period we went to lunch, and we sat down, and I said, you know, you have a really horrible look on your face that's been there since the first period, and could you just tell me what I said that upset you? Because I'm always trying to improve my presentation, and I don't have all the answers, and I would like to know what it is that I said that upsets you. And she said, oh, it's not you. I have never felt so betrayed by my college professors. When you finished your first 45 minutes, you put it together so beautifully. That greatest war blew me away. It just put it all together in a way that, the way you use God, and the way you talk to the kids, and the way you, you know, I go into war movies and, you know, everything that I can think of that would hook them. And I said, well, you know, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And she said, then, the second period, I emailed all my other teachers in my history group, in my department, to bring their students into this classroom because this guy is really good. What he's telling them is really amazing. And none of them brought their kids in. They all said no. So I've not only been betrayed by my college professors, but I've been betrayed by my own department right in the school. So she says, what works best for you? And I said, an auditorium presentation with all the students so I can do it once. Instead of doing it 6 times a day, I can do it once. And then I can go in the classroom during the day and answer their questions. Because I tell them, you need to challenge me on anything that you didn't understand or anything you're having a problem with. Even the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, I can speak to you about lessons that we're learning there. And she said, okay, next year you're coming in the auditorium. So last year I went in and there were 200 students in the auditorium. And she said, I'm going to try and work on my other teachers. A year later I go in and there are 200 students in the auditorium and she's the only teacher that brought her students. The only one. She still couldn't convince them. This year I went and she emailed me and she said, when are you coming back? And I said, you give me the date, I'll be there. She says, you're going to have 300 students because I finally convinced 2 of the teachers to bring you, and it wasn't me that convinced them. The kids that heard the presentation were talking about it for months, and the kids that didn't hear it were asking the teachers why couldn't they hear it too. And they kept badgering the teachers. So finally, she got 2 other teachers to bring their students, and I would have 300 kids in the auditorium. I got to the school, I got in there, and she came up to me and she said, you're going to have 500 kids, we're filling the auditorium. I says, why, what happened? She says, all the teachers couldn't keep saying no to these kids. So they're bringing all their students, so I had 500 kids this year. And that's how I build, but do you know how hard it was? It's 7 years, 8 years working to get to that. And then she hit me with the bombshell after I was done. She said, that was great, fabulous. And the bombshell was she was pregnant, and she's having her baby, and she might not be there next year. And I said, who's going to take your place? And she says, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. So I've asked teachers in other schools for letters of recommendation, and they've given me those letters, and I've gone back the next year, and those teachers are gone.
We got to squeeze in another question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you have any insight as to why that vet from Afghan had the attitude that we all owed him the rest of his life?
Because that's the way he was raised in school. The teachers were telling him. You know, they're passing out condoms in the school. And what do you think that says to a kid?
You're supposed to use it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to make balloons, you know. And they curved the test in the school. They curved the test. They literally curved the test. They come in and they curve the test so that every kid passes. And they're not keeping score at the Little League games because they don't want the kids to feel that they lost. I mean, come on. Do I have to go into any further detail of why that kid thinks that he was owed anything? He didn't know what failure was. They were coddled and nurtured and, oh, we're going to take care of you.
It's just really surprising that he would have even been in the Army.
Excuse me?
Surprising he would have been in the Army.
Yeah. Well, he went into service because he had no place else to go. And his parents must have said to him, you either get a job or, you know, they might have, you know, put... If there's a class, say a high school graduating class is 1,000 kids, and I'm just using a high number to make it easy. Out of that 1,000 kids, 3 or 4 may join the military. Not talking a lot. They're not talking a lot. And they may seem, and I was at a school in Connecticut, and I did my presentation to about 200 or 300 students, and they had at the school at the same time guys from West Point who were looking to recruit. And these West Point graduates came over to me and said, that's the best presentation I've ever heard. There isn't a kid in the country that shouldn't hear that. And I was like blown away. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I said, why do you think that? He said, because you would weed out all the wannabes before they even got to us. Because you're telling them the truth. You know, I go into the war movies and I tell them, you know, the war movies are only 5% of what war really is. You're only getting 5%. And I list all the stuff they're missing. Because that's as close as most people will ever be to any war, is the war movies. That's as close as they get. So a teacher comes up to me, is it only 5%? And I said, you know what? This is the only time where I'm really telling a little fib. I'm really lying. It's really 1%. But no one would believe me if I said 1%, so I say 5%. She says, oh, I thought it was at least 50%. And I said, lady, you're not even... I said, did you get what I said? She says, yeah, I can't even wrap my head around it. I can't even... I'm still shaking over that part of your presentation, that the war movies are only 5%. She says, could you put maybe 10%? And I said, what would be the difference in 5 or 10%? So you see, I'm teaching the teachers as much as I'm teaching the students. And if I could get to some of these teachers to let them know that the path they're on is because they're afraid to lose their job. In other words, they're afraid of losing their job if they go and stand up for God and country. They're afraid to lose their job. And no one's there to back them up. There isn't, a couple of hundred people at a school board meeting saying, what teacher are you firing? I was at a school board meeting in Jersey, and I'm asking the school board those two things. Could you change the mission statement and change the core values? And I got up first to speak because they asked, who wants to start? And I stood right up. You know what? I'm starting. Because I don't want these parents to leave and not know what I said. So I sat back down, and the parents were there because the school board wanted to fire their basketball coach. And the reason they wanted to fire the basketball coach is because, as one of the parents said, everything that Vietnam veteran said is what that coach stands for. So I started to laugh, and I go, what is so funny? And I said, don't you guys know they're getting rid of him because of what I said? They don't want American core values. They don't want the kids to know to be good American citizens. They want this global, liberal, progressive, social justice crap that they're pushing on them, and this teacher's fighting back. And there's 15 or 20 of you to fight for the teacher. So one of the guys in the group said, well, we can bring 400. I said, it's not enough. You have to bring enough to change the vote to get them out. And then they might change and say, all right, we're going to keep that coach. So one of the parents looked at me and he said, you're kidding me, right? And I go, no, I'm telling you. Why do you think I'm standing here? Did you hear me ask them what I asked them? He says, yeah. I said, do you think that I didn't check the website before I came, that any of that was on there? Check it for yourself and look. The mission statement is to make them global citizens. What's wrong with being an American citizen? And your coach wants them to be an American citizen, and that's why they want to get rid of him. Because he's bucking the system. And they all looked at and the school board sat there and didn't say a word. Nothing. And you know why they didn't have to? Because they knew that those 15 or 20 parents would leave and probably never come back. And they could fire the coach anyway, and they're going to do whatever they want because not enough people will stand up and fight back. So the teachers go, okay, I need a job, and I like to teach, I'll have to go that direction. And I'm saying, stand up. Be not afraid, stand up. And if you don't have kids in the school board, it doesn't mean you can't go. Your property tax pays for the school. You have every right to stand there and tell them that as much as any parent that has a school in a school.
We're paying.
It's your community school. It's from you. The school is supposed to be for the people, by the people of that community. And the federal government's running it with their agenda.
Amen.
Come on. So I'm standing here saying, be not afraid. Stand up. Stand up. Any more questions? Go ahead.
I think what you're doing is a really, really good thing that he has going on here, but you're a one-man army. Have you ever thought about what you could do forming a platoon of people like yourself? I mean, what I see is that there's not enough involvement at the local level in the schools. And that's just because people aren't going to the school boards. But really, if they were going to the school boards all the time and had a unified vote, there would be changes. And it doesn't need to be partisan, Republican or Democrat, whatever. I'm not opposed to that happening if it was, but it doesn't have to be. It could be groups like this that would set up a committee or whatever of people that would be willing to coordinate with individuals such as yourself. Have you ever thought about doing that? And if so, or if not, why not? Could it be done?
I haven't thought about it because the major mission here is to get rid of this administration in Washington, D.C. and change Congress and the Senate and get American patriots elected. And you can't do both. You can't start and put all your resources against changing the administration and then all of a sudden go into the schools. So I was hoping that if we win this election and we get, if we stop it, I know we're not going to turn it around, I'm just trying to stop it. We can then go back to the schools and colleges and universities and fight there. I stopped going to the colleges. I was at the University of Miami, and let me tell you what happened. I'm at the University of Miami, and I'm asking the professor if I can speak to his students. And I have an outline of my presentation, and he says to me, and this is like 7, 8, 9 years ago. This is how long this has been going on. He says, we only teach the Vietnam War every other year, and this isn't your year. And the course is no longer called the Vietnam War. And I was stunned, and I said, what's it called? He says, it's now called American History of the 60s and 70s. So I said, well, what's World War II? American History of the 30s and 40s? And he says, yes! And he was happy that I got that. He was happy. And don't tell me Korea is American History of the 50s. Yes, yes! He was thrilled. So I said, why do you do that? Why do you do that? He says, because everybody's included. That's social justice. You have to include everybody. You can't eliminate anybody. And the students get the timeline. So I said, wow. It sounds to me like you're sweeping a lot of good people under the rug. And that's what it sounds like to me. What's wrong with calling the course the Vietnam War and American History of the 60s and 70s? What would be wrong with that? Oh, that title's much too long. Much too long. I says, yeah, but you're sweeping good people under the rug. What gives you the right to do that? I'm a doctor of history. A doctor of history. And it's my course, and I can do whatever I want. And the urge to kill comes over me. And it's not a good feeling, because I've been there and done that, and it's really horrible. And I need to control myself. So I got up and I walked out, and it's a very tough position to be in, because you start thinking, did I really kill the right people? And if I kill the right person, will I be redeemed? And you know you can't, so you have to walk away. So I walked away from that college university, and I said, man, I can't seem to get in anywhere. So I stopped going to the colleges because I couldn't get in any college. And then finally I thought, well, let me give it another try. And I went into a college, and I walked in, and I was asking directions where the history department was, and the student said, well, what are you here for? And I said, well, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I do a presentation, and I like to talk to the students. And she said, well, if they won't let you in, why don't you come to our student government meeting, because we bring in speakers that the professors don't want to bring in. And, oh, wow, great, that's a great idea. I had never thought of that. I said, that's a terrific idea, I'll do that. I'll go to the student government, and I'll get in and I'll speak to the students. And I said, well, that's great. She says, come to our meeting, it's tonight, and then present what you want to say, and then we'll vote on it, and then if we all agree, we'll give you a venue. I thought, oh, terrific. So I went to the meeting, I said to them what I proposed, and there was like 20 or 25 students on the student board, and I got a 20 to 5, 20 yes, 5 no, or whatever, something, you know. And they said, okay, we're gonna bring you in. And I said, oh, terrific. I was all excited, and I gave them the outline of my presentation, and they gave me this nice lecture hall, and they set it all up, and they put notices out for all the students, and I said to this to the lady, to this to the student. I said, how many students show up when you bring a speaker in? She said, we've never had less than 150 or more than 200. I said, wow, I'll have 150 kids I'll speak to. That's wonderful. The night comes, the venue's open, I walk in, 7 students showed up. 7. So I go over to the lady and I said, to the student, and I said, what happened? She says, well, whenever we bring a speaker in, the professors always give extra credit for attending the lecture and then writing about it, and they'll give extra credit. They wouldn't give you extra credit because they knew that America's freedom is so strong and so powerful that liberalism and progressivism and socialism can't stand up to it. And the only way they can fight against that freedom in America is to not discuss it, not talk about it. And they knew that there was no way any kid walking out of your lecture would not get what freedom in America was all about. So they wouldn't give extra credit. And that's when I stopped going to the colleges and universities. But after this election, if we win, we have to go back. We have to. We have no choice.
On that note, we're going to have to shut her down. But
Thank you, everyone.
Give a big
God bless
hand.
you.